One time, my brother and I were going down a canyon road with a cousin. He was chopping wood, had this axe. There was a rattler. He started chasing it. He started chopping at it. Eventually, he cut it in two. The front bit him right here, at the crook between the forefinger and the thumb. So many ways he could have responded. He could have chased that poisonous snake and driven the poison to the heart. He was smart, quick, proactive, subordinated feelings to values, got the blood out as fast as he could. Many people get hurt by someone. It does hurt them. But the real injury is going after the person, going after the snake. That's what drives the poison to the heart. It's not what people do to us that hurts us in the most fundamental sense. It's our chosen response to what they do to us that hurts us. Reactive people want to get back. They want to get even. They gather people around them that massage their heart and validate them and give them additional evidence to justify them and to condemn someone else out there who has done this injury. A lot of people gather together daily and confess the sins of their bosses. It becomes the fabric, the content of the coffee break and the lunch. Highly reactive. Proactive people learn to get the poison out and to move on. To forgive, to forget. Resentment means to live it again and again and again, and to fester, feed upon it. The net effect is to get filled with negative energy, to polarize, to seek self-justification, to look for data. That which we want to believe can easily be supported by data. The way you interpret data, as Eleanor Roosevelt put it, nothing can make you feel inferior without your consent. As Gandhi put it, no one can take away your respect unless you give it to him. Proactive people who act on the basis of their values, their purposes, their vision, don't give their power away, their freedom, their power to choose, to other people's weaknesses. We simply must never build our emotional life around the weaknesses of other people. Otherwise, we disempower ourselves and empower their weaknesses to continue to mess our life up. This is heavy-duty stuff, particularly for people that have had years and years of explaining away their misery in the name of somebody else. One time, a woman stood up in the middle of a group like this and started to give a speech on her own, spontaneously. And then she sensed the inappropriateness of that, grew a little embarrassed and sat back down, but she could not restrain herself from talking to everyone around her. She was just filled with some kind of explosive learning or excitement. And she had positive energy. You could see it in her eyes and her gestures, her body language. I could hardly wait to the break to get up to her. What happened to you? Oh, you have no idea what that principle, that habit of being proactive means to me. I'm the full-time nurse to the most miserable, ungrateful character you can imagine. He doesn't even acknowledge me, let alone show any form of appreciation. The other full-time nurses feel just like I do. We almost sit around and talk about his demise. Hope for it, wish for it, while we're taking care of him. And for you to have the gall to suggest that I chose to be miserable? Come on. I didn't choose it. He made me. But then I realized how dependent I am, how I've given my power to his miserable behavior. She said, as soon as I swallowed that big, thick, bitter pill, and it hit, and I realized, wait a minute, if I chose to be miserable, I can choose otherwise. She said, I was let out of prison. I was liberated. That's when I stood up. I wanted to talk to everyone. I wanted to proclaim my freedom. I could not contain myself. I just can't tell you what that means. Between what happens to us, the stimulus, and our response to the stimulus lies our freedom. All our behavior and our actions flow from our paradigm. Deterministic psychology tends to break out into three areas, three fields. Genetic determinism, psychic determinism, environmental determinism. Genetic determinism basically means your grandparents did it to you. Yeah, I have a short fuse. It just seems to go through generations. My father has one, and his father. Yeah, I'm a night person. Yeah, whole family is. Don't talk to me in the morning. I'm not pleasant. This has come through the generations. You see, what if I had a predisposition because of my genetic makeup? Okay, that is the stimulus. Between that and our response to it is our freedom to choose our response. So what would we do? We'd adopt a lifestyle so that it didn't activate that genetic tendency, so that our lives were not made dysfunctional from it. Now, this isn't to say that we are not genetically powerfully influenced. It is to say that we are not genetically determined. And the difference between being influenced by and determined by is 180 degrees. Psychic determinism means your parents did it to you, not your grandparents. It didn't come through the DNA necessarily, the chromosomal structure of the DNA. Your parents did it to you. It's the way they raised you. It's very Freudian. Child is father to the man. That means the first few years of childhood, how you were treated and raised, how you were rejected, how you developed deep psychic wounds from those abuses of one kind or another, so conditioned your emotional makeup, your personality, as to last a lifetime. The child is father to the man. And many have heard, once you're 6, 7, 8, that's it. It's pretty much in concrete. There's not much you can do. Psychic determinism. No question those forces powerfully influence us. In fact, for the first several years of life, until the time of self-awareness around 7, 8, 9 years old, there is no separation between stimulus and response. So that whatever stimulus went in here went right into the response. And the psychic scarring is there. The genetic tendencies are there. As soon as self-awareness begins to take place, there's a separation. This space, this freedom and power to choose. Then those tendencies are still there. So we're powerfully influenced by genetic and psychic forces. They're there. But we still have this space. We could behave in ways that might even possibly erase these. Or if not erase them, subordinate them. Eclipse them. Render them non-functional. They still may be there to some degree. Possibly they could be erased through different kinds of therapies. The point is, you still have this freedom to choose. Even if it's that much, work on it. This whole idea of I am a product of something, instead of I am the programmer that chooses my response to that product. Environmental determinism basically means that your spouse is doing it to you. Your boss is doing it to you. Your culture is doing it to you. Environmental determinism embraces the whole concept of external cultural influences. Again, without any question, we're influenced by those factors. Need to be factored in, but not determined. That's why habit 1 is the habit of personal vision. You can choose your response by the exercise of that freedom, that power to choose, the highest of the powers. In that space are 4 human endowments: self-awareness, imagination, conscience, and independent will. Frankl could envision himself. He could see himself in a whole different situation. A company can envision its future. That's why they say the essence of leadership is vision and the ability to create a culture around that vision so that there's commitment toward that vision that is common, so that everyone exercises collectively their imagination. Even though they have this awareness of the swamp-like culture they're in now, they're aware, see, self-aware. They stand apart and can examine. If we live out of our memory, we're tied to the past and to that which is finite. When we live out of our imagination, we're tied to that which is infinite. Has unbelievable potentiality because we barely scratched what is inside of us. And then independent will. We can act on that imagination. We can act on that conscience. The universal conscience. The universal conscience of all mankind. And we can act upon it. We could swim upstream. We could go against the current. You need all 4 human endowments to optimize. Self-awareness is not sufficient. In my opinion, it's focused on too much. The constant exploration of one's past and the psychic and social scarring that took place. Not that it is not helpful and useful. I think it is. But it is not sufficient. It gets imbalanced if you don't use your imagination to create something new, to find a new meaning, a new value, a new future, and to independently exercise your willpower to move toward it. But imagination is insufficient. Hitler was an imaginative person, but he had no conscience. He was very value-driven, but the values were not based on principles. It's self-awareness, plus imagination, plus conscience, plus independent will. The key is to take time to pause in that space, to tap into those human endowments. Self-awareness, imagination, conscience, and independent will. Then begin to act. Small, slow ways.